Lamborghini recently announced its latest hybrid vehicle, the Urus SE. So I thought I'd give you my rather belated views on the vehicle, not that anyone actually asked for them, but as someone who's owned two prior Lamborghinis, I have some perspective on this to some extent. Now the Urus SE, unsurprisingly, is the latest in the Urus lineup. It's the first Urus to use a hybrid powertrain, and it marks Lamborghini's move toward having everything being hybridized, which came about with the Revuelto and is now in the Urus. And that's not really very much of a surprise, because that appears to be where most of the car manufacturers are headed, generally speaking anyway. Now the Urus SE is also reasonably powerful. It's got 788 combined horsepower, when you've got both the electric engine and the V8. You've got the V8 that has a 611 horsepower, and the electric motor which is 189 horsepower. Now it purportedly accelerates from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, or 0 to 62 miles per hour, in 3.4 seconds. This means the Urus SE has more horsepower than many of the other rivals. For example, the Cayenne Turbo SE Hybrid has 729 horsepower, and the powertrain is shared with the Cayenne S Turbo E Hybrid, albeit this has been somewhat upscaled for the Urus SE. The Purosangue has 715 horsepower, the DBX 707 697 horsepower, the Bentayga Speed 626 horsepower. Now the Urus SE has 11 drive modes, one of which is pure electric mode, and reportedly can go for about 60 miles in pure electric drive. Although I wouldn't be surprised if that actually goes down significantly in stop-start traffic, or if you're actually hauling quite a lot as a load. Nevertheless, that's what it says they do, and it has, like I've said, 11 drive modes. It reportedly can go off-road, and Lamborghini has been showing footage of this in the snow, but again, whether or not it's actually used as such, well, that remains to be seen, because if you scratch the paint, it's probably going to cost you a ton of money, so no one's really going to take this off-road. But regardless, it theoretically can. It also has an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. Now, in terms of the actual features that it has, well, obviously Lamborghini has options that you add on, but in my experience, it nickel and dimes you less than Porsche or Ferrari. I feel like the options are better value than, for example, in those other brands. Now, standard kit includes leather trim, has 12-way power adjustable seats, 4-zone climate control, a new 12.3-inch infotainment system, which is an increase from 10.1 inches. It has Sensorum premium sound, which I'm sure is meaningful to some people, and has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. To my mind, that part of the interior looks a little bit cluttered, but the interior is otherwise rather nice. In terms of other outside aesthetics, it comes with 23-inch wheels, which are sitting on Pirelli P0 tires, which notably are not really off-road tires, but are going to be perfectly adequate for what you're needing to do with it around the city. Now the color palette also is rather extensive, but of course quite a lot of those are ad personam options. There are 100 paint options, and there are various different colors to choose from. For example, there's the launch color, Arancio Agon, which is this orange color. It also has a combination of this Arancio, this orange color, with inside colors or interior orange leather trim, which is in this other alternative leather trim that you can get with the vehicle. There's also 47 color combinations and 4 types of embroidery, with of course the ad personam program giving lots of customization within both the interior and the exterior of the car. So in theory, you could spend many tens of thousands of dollars customizing the paint on this vehicle. Whether that's a good idea is another question entirely, because to my mind, a lot of the resale for something like an Urus is going to come down to condition and how many kilometers or miles that you've put on it. My experience selling a Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera is that people pay more for the Superleggera, but they still consider kilometers and they still consider condition. So for example, when someone is putting a Superleggera against a non-Superleggera, they're going to compare the kilometers. And like for like, they'll pay more for the special edition, but they're not necessarily going to pay a lot more when it has a lot more kilometers. So bear that in mind with the Urus. If you are over-speccing it, but then you drive it a lot, people are going to consider that when you were looking to sell the vehicle. Now, when I looked at customizing the car, well, to my mind, there were some things that are nice to have and some things that are less necessary. So for example, in terms of the exterior color, I would personally lean toward a darker color because something like the launch color, the Orancio Agon, which is very, very bright, is going to be a little bit too much on a vehicle this large in my opinion. So I would lean toward maybe a darker gray metallic, and if you don't like metallic, you could always get matte paint protection film, which you put on afterwards, because that's going to be easier to care for than getting matte paint. In terms of interior and in terms of brake calipers, that's where I'd be looking for the contrast. So for example, interior-wise, I might go with black leather and orange trim or orange accents, which adds a little bit of interest to the interior. I would obviously want two-tone leather in the interior because that is going to attract at least either a higher price or an easier sale. But I wouldn't necessarily go overboard because I doubt people are going to pay a lot more money for the classic ad personam trim than they are for the two-tone leather. Maybe a little bit, but you probably won't get the money back. Similarly, spending a lot of money on other options. I would, however, get carbon options on the interior. In my experience, they haven't been too egregiously priced with Lamborghini, so therefore that's probably something that's worth adding. But overall, there's a lot of standard equipment, and I don't feel like looking around this, you're going to be nickel and dimed too much on the options. So overall, therefore, looking at the price, this is looking at launching at, and again, there's some rubberiness around these prices. It seems like it could be decent value in this space. Certainly better value in my opinion than, for example, the Aston Martin DBX 707 or the Cayenne S Turbo E Hybrid, which I think is terrible value relative to the Urus, or the Purosangue, which I think is even worse value relative to the Urus, because if you look, for example, at all of the other four-seater Ferraris, they haven't done terribly well in resale market, although the Purosangue appears to be much more limited. Now, in terms of whether this car is for me, probably not, because I'm not really in the market for an expensive practical car, but I quite like it. I would look at picking up a used, I would look at picking up a used Urus, although personally at the moment I'm actually looking at picking up a used S63. So I'm not really going to be in the market for this one, but I don't dislike it, and I would consider it in the future potentially. But of course I do rather like Lamborghini as a brand. One thing I do want to note here, of course, is that Lamborghinis can be serviced by independent mechanics, but my experience with Lamborghini is they've been A, incredibly reliable, and B, the sales team has been incredibly easy and professional to deal with. And I've had only good experiences dealing with Lamborghini. But of course, the sales team and the service team might differ based on where you are based. But in any case, let me know your thoughts about the Urus SE or about this review, which seems to be just me droning on incessantly, in the comments below. And otherwise, hopefully, I will actually see you next time. And thanks for tuning in.